Sama, a poor young man, wandered through the market since morning, searching for a job to sustain himself, but he found nothing. He sat by the roadside, lost in thought. Suddenly, people started running in all directions. He looked up, surprised, and saw a luxurious carriage pulled by horses stopping before him. A wealthy and dignified-looking man stepped out and asked, "Why are you sitting here, young man?" Sama looked up and replied, "I've been searching for a job since morning, but I found nothing. Now, I don't know what to do." The man smiled and said, "How about working for me? I have a great opportunity for you." Sama's face lit up with excitement. "Of course, I'd be happy to." The man gestured toward the carriage and said, "Then hop in and we'll discuss the details on the way." Sama hesitated for a moment and asked, "Where are we going?" The man laughed and said, "You'll find out when we get there." Sama got into the carriage and they set off across the desert. During the journey, Sama recalled how people had fled when the man arrived at the market, so he asked, "Why did everyone run away when you arrived?" The man chuckled and said, "It's an old story. I'll tell you later." They arrived at a magnificent palace in the middle of the desert with golden pillars and towering gates gleaming under the sun. The man opened the doors and said, "Come in." Sama entered, and the man ordered his servants to prepare food. As they dined together, a beautiful yet sorrowful-looking young woman joined them. Sama noticed her sadness and asked about her. The man smiled and said, "She is my only daughter, and we live alone in this vast palace." Sama glanced at the girl and saw that she was staring at him with a mix of admiration and worry, as if she knew something he didn't. When he finished eating, the man pointed to a room and said, "Rest for the night. Tomorrow, we start work." At midnight, the young woman came to Sama and handed him 2 stones, one gold and one silver, whispering, "If you ever face danger, strike these stones together." Before leaving, Sama asked, "Why were you sad at the table?" She lowered her head and said, "It's nothing." Then she left. The next morning, the man woke Sama up and said, "It's time for work." They rode the carriage until they reached a towering mountain. The man stopped, pulled out a bottle of water, and handed it to Sama. Unbeknownst to Sama, the man had laced it with a sleeping potion. As soon as Sama drank it, he lost consciousness. At that moment, a flock of giant eagles descended upon him, lifted him into the sky, and carried him to the mountain peak. As Sama regained consciousness, he found himself surrounded by the eagles. "Where am I?" he shouted. The man laughed from below and said, "You are on top of the mountain of gold, and you won't come down until you mine the gold for me." Sama had no choice but to gather the gold and throw it down, where the man loaded it into his cart. Once the work was done, the man laughed wickedly and said, "Thank you. You have extracted a great treasure for me. But I'm afraid you won't be coming down. 49 young men came before you, and you are the 50th. He then abandoned Sama on the mountain. Sama sat in despair, but then he remembered the 2 stones the girl had given him. He struck them together, and suddenly a mighty genie appeared, saying, "Command me as you wish." Shocked, Sama said, "I want to descend from this mountain." In an instant, the genie carried him down. Sama couldn't believe he had survived. He wandered through the desert searching for the palace, but it was gone. As he walked, he met an old man and asked about the palace. The old man cautiously asked, "Why are you looking for it?" Sama told him his story, and the old man warned him, "I advise you not to return there. That man is evil." But Sama insisted, "I must confront him and reclaim my rights." Upon reaching the palace, Sama hid nearby and watched as the man left in his carriage. Once he was gone, Sama sneaked inside and found only the girl. When she saw him, she said, "I knew you would survive." Sama told her everything. She sighed and said, "That man is not my father. He is my husband." Sama was shocked and asked how that happened. She recounted her tragic story, how the man had lured her brother to the mountain, killed him, and then deceived her into marrying him. Sama looked at her firmly and said, "I will put an end to this injustice." The next night, the man returned with another young man, repeating the same scheme. But this time, Sama had hidden in the carriage. Upon reaching the mountain, he secretly switched the poisoned water. The man drank it and soon lost consciousness. Sama made a terrifying sound, and the eagles swarmed down, grabbing the man and lifting him to the mountain peak. When he woke up, he found himself trapped and screamed, "Please, get me down. I'll give you whatever you want." Sama laughed and said, "As you once told me, you must mine the gold first." The man had no choice but to extract the gold while Sama loaded the carts. When the work was done, the man cried, "Now, how do I get down?" Sama smiled and said, 49 came before you, and you are the 50th. Then he left, leaving the man stranded. Sama returned to the palace and told the girl what had happened. She rejoiced. Then Sama asked, "Will you marry me?" "Happily," she replied, "Yes." After their marriage, Sama discovered a chamber in the palace filled with gold. They decided to take it to the market and distribute it to the poor. When they arrived, Sama stood on the carriage and told his story to the people, then began handing out gold to those in need. In the end, he and his wife turned the palace into a refuge for the needy and lived happily ever after, their names remembered for generations.